What's up, everyone? Steven with Herd Homes Real Estate here in Orange County, California. And I want to talk to you today about what I do to prepare a listing before going on the market. This is probably one of the things that I get asked most by other agents, which is how do you get your listings to look so good? How do you get them to sell so quickly? How do you set expectations with your clients? And just kind of all that listing prep stuff that we just don't learn in real estate school. Nobody teaches us, and you kind of have to learn along the way. So in this video, I'm going to cover a few things. One of them is going to be the importance of the pre-listing activities. Two is going to be some of the expectations I set with clients. And then three is how I review offers on my listings. So let's talk about some of the pre-listing activities. Here is my kind of philosophy on the way that I list homes. I want to make it look the best it can possibly look within the, what's within reason for the seller. And I want to make it to where it's the least amount of risk for the buyer. Okay, so the best it can look and least amount of risk. Okay, so let's talk about the best it can look. What I will do is in that initial consultation or that listing appointment, I will actually create a detailed checklist of everything that I recommend this seller do to prepare their home for sale. Now that this is not just some generic list, and I've really gotten good at this over time, what I will be recommending to them. But essentially it revolves a lot around decluttering, staging if possible, if not possible, reorganizing large furniture, touch-up paint, pre-listing repairs, all those sorts of things. And I'll just summarize that by kind of saying, if we can open up space and if we can make things clean and clear, it's going to have the biggest difference. And that's why I'm a huge fan of staging, because I believe staging helps homes sell faster and for more money. So if we're able to get their furniture out and if we're able to stage, I try to do that as much as possible. In fact, if you check my Zillow and you check a lot of the homes that I've listed, right now it's 2026, you will see a lot of them have staging furniture in them, and they look fairly turnkey. And then in terms of the overall condition of the home, one last point on that. When it comes to large furniture, what I will find is that a lot of people have some large furniture pieces. And you'll enter a bedroom and you'll have a hard time visualizing your space in there. Or maybe seeing, where is our nightstands going to go, and where's our, is our mattress big enough for this room, because there's a very large dresser in there or a very large vanity or something. So as much as possible, I try to take all of that out of the house and replace it with staging furniture or just open up space. Now, I tell all my sellers that they can put it in the garage, whatever they want. Buyers, at least in California, they don't care about what's in the garage. So that's how I make it realistic for them and not make them think that they have to go get a storage pod and do all this stuff. But I can even have my staging team sometimes take their stuff out, put it in the garage, and put the new stuff in. So that's how I make it easy for them. Now, I will also recommend pre-listing repairs or refreshes. So sometimes, which I'll talk about in a separate video, they'll actually hire us to work with our team to actually renovate their home before putting it on the market. We call it our Herd Homes Refresh Program. But most of the time I'm working a lot with what they've got, and a lot of times touch-up paint is my number one go-to in just making the home look better, because if buyers come into a home and it looks clean and it's upgraded, but the paint is just old and danky and there's handprints all over the walls, it's really not going to go well, and it's just not going to look clean. So touch-up paint is a big one. If it's a color that is not a popular trending color, then we're actually going to recommend that they paint the house. So a lot of times when we are painting, we'll just go with like a, neutral kind of white paint. But if they have like green or red or blue walls, that is a big one that's going to make a huge difference, because we want to appeal to the most amount of buyers. So that's a little bit about what I do in listing preparation and kind of prepping the home for sale and making sure that everything's clean and the home is painted and kind of turnkey. I will also do things to try to eliminate risk from the buyer. So I will have a pre-listing home inspection. If there's a pool, a pre-listing pool inspection. If the home is more than 40 or 50 years old, I'll do a sewer line inspection. And I will also do a termite inspection. Now, people often ask me who pays for that. I have the seller pay for that upfront. And depending on the commission structure or what I negotiate with them, sometimes I'll reimburse them for that. But a lot of times I'm just having them pay for it and pay for it up front. This does two things. One, it helps them to really get bought into this process so they get a little bit more committed. And two, it lets us know anything that could be potentially wrong with the home that is a red flag. And if there is, I either want to try to fix it or I want to communicate that to buyers up front so that they're not surprised and they don't ask for huge requests for repairs in escrow. These pre-listing inspections is my number one negotiating strategy. Having the information in advance, sitting with the inspector, asking them, what does this mean? How would you fix that? What do you think it would cost? Really knowing it more than the buyer or the buyer's agent is my number one negotiating strategy, because many times if they find it out in escrow, their agent might not be an expert or they might not know how to handle that conversation. So a small issue can turn into a big issue. And so that's why I want to know this information in advance. And I have saved sellers $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in repair requests by simply being able to articulate, here's how you fix this problem and it's not as bad as what you're thinking. So that's what I do with the pre-listing home inspections to eliminate risk. I also pull the natural hazard disclosure report. This is common in California. I don't know if this, if other states have this, but it lets us know if the home is in a flood zone or a fire zone or maybe a landslide zone. And I want to know that in advance, and I want to communicate that to buyers in advance. So one, they can obtain valid insurance quotes, and number two, so that they're not surprised and they enter escrow just to find out they couldn't get insurance. Now I have to go back to the market, and it's a bigger deal than, it could have been, right? So that is another thing I do. So the inspections, the NHD report. I will also have the seller fill out their disclosures. In California, we're required to fill out seller disclosures and just kind of communicate to the buyer what we know is wrong with the property the seller is. And so a lot of times what they told me completely changes when they actually sit there and look through their disclosures. And so I've had a practice of having them fill that out before going to the market. So that way I'm aware if there's any, deaths on the property, anything that they maybe forgot to communicate to me, and I could just forward that to the buyer and they have all the facts in front of them. So my personal opinion is that, if you give buyers the information up front, they're less likely to negotiate and try to use it as leverage in escrow. And so obviously there's a little bit of a strategy behind this because I want to price the home aggressively, and we'll talk about expectations in a minute, but I want to have multiple offers, because if I have multiple offers and I have a lot of people interested in the property and they know all the information up front, I can get them to pre-agree to no repairs. Okay, so hey, there's multiple offers on the home. Are you interested in the property? Did you have a chance to review the inspection reports? Do you have any major objections? Okay, the seller's not going to be doing any repairs. You're welcome to do your own inspections, but I want you to understand there will not be a credit for repairs, and we have backup offers. Are you cool with that? Great, let's move forward. So that is how I prepare it to eliminate risk from the buyer and to really do a good job of preparing the home to look its best possible to the public. One last point on that. This is an area I've had to grow in a lot. I've been a realtor for over 17 years, and I never really partnered with my clients in the first 5 to 10 years in really doing a good job of getting them to prepare their home for sale. And I took that responsibility on, maybe 5 to 7 years ago, and it has made a huge impact on my business. My clients love it. It makes their lives easier. It makes selling the home easier. So I've just been, steadily doing lots of research on, design trends and paint colors and upgrades and renovations and just things that, we could do to make their home look better. And I've been able to net my sellers, $670,000 additional profit through strategic upfront preparation and renovations on homes to help it sell for more and faster. So that's eliminating risk, and that is making the home look better. Now let's talk about expectations with the clients. I set a couple of expectations that really make my life easier, and they make the seller's life easier. One, I set expectations on how to prepare for showings. I basically communicate to them when a showing happens, here's how you should act, or here's what should happen. I use showing time, so it sends them a text message, gives them a chance to approve it. And what I basically let them know is when somebody comes to look at your home, we want all the lights on, we want the blinds open, et cetera, et cetera. And I just basically communicate to them how we want the home to be show ready. Now, we think that this is natural to people or that they already know this, but it's really not. I have so many buyers, so many sellers that are very, very smart, educated people who I show up to their house for a showing, or an agent shows up to their house for a showing, and there's dishes in the sink and the lights are off, and it's like, nobody taught them what to do, right? So with that being said, that's one of the things that I really try to do is set expectations for showings and let them know how to prepare for them. Second is I set expectations for when and how I will update them. So I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you have a showing on a home and your seller calls you immediately after the showing is done and says, oh my gosh, what happened? What's the feedback? So I let them know when a showing happens. It's going to take sometimes a couple days to get feedback from the agent. Many times they're looking at other properties. So I don't want to call them right away and then they say they're interested. Then they look at 5 other properties and I get you excited about their interest, but turns out they're no longer interested. So I want to wait a day or two, get all their feedback, and then I'm going to deliver that feedback to you within a day or two. Secondly, I'm going to give you one update a week where I tell you how many people have viewed the home online, how many people have viewed the home in person, what their feedback is, and any of my recommendations or anybody that's interested in the property. Okay, so I set that expectation. I let them know that's going to come out Monday by noon via email, and that gets them, to not panic Monday morning, because I used to have sellers who would, text me first thing in the morning, what happened? Well, when people know when you'll respond, they kind of ease up a little bit. So that's the second expectation I set. Next is how I review offers, and I'll just kind of put this in the expectations section of this video. But reviewing offers, I just have a very simple process where I read the offer carefully. I double check it to make sure I didn't miss any details. I then call or email the lender and I verify the financing. I ask, what is your buyer's debt to income ratio? What is their current, how long have they been on their job? Are they W-2? Are they 1099? Do you have their tax returns? Do you have their recent bank statements? Have you verified their, employment? And I kind of basically do like a mini pre-qual with the lender, because how many times has this happened where, the lender is like, yeah, they're fine, everything's great. Oh, wait a minute, they didn't, they told me that they had made more money, but then I looked at the information and they didn't, right? Typical terrible lender mistake. So if I sense any hesitation from them, I need to let my client know about that before we accept their offer. So that's how we'll do it. Then we'll typically send out, if there's multiple offers, we'll send out multiple counter offers to some of the top offers, outline clean contingency terms, and essentially communicate, please submit your highest and best offer, because once that highest and best comes back, that lets us know everything that's on the table, and it lets the seller know we're not leaving money on the table. Basically, because a lot of sellers will say, well, could we have gotten more? Well, they told us, here's all the offers we got, and this person's is the highest offer. So I don't think we could have gotten more because we would have received an offer for more. So in summary, this is how I eliminate risk for, in the transaction for the buyer, how I prepare the home for the seller, and how I set expectations and review offers on our listings. I hope this video is helpful to you. If you have any other tips, comment them below so I can learn from you too. Everybody has such great practices and everybody's so unique. I think it's really cool to see what everybody is doing differently. I'm Stephen Hurd, your Orange County, California realtor, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.